afternoon everybody and welcome back to Thirsty Thursday. My name's Claire and I'm the artist and designer for Thirsty Brush and a guest presenter on Create and Craft. So thank you again for joining me in the live studio here at Stamps by Me for another demo pack show for you. So just while I get ready for our demos, there's plenty more of our embossing powder stuff to show you today, but just before I get ready, here's another video from last week. Welcome back, hope you enjoyed that recap. Just a quick reminder, if you want to see more videos and demonstrations from myself and the lovely Tony, who's Stamps by Me studio, this is her studio, then do like and subscribe, and for all the Thirsty Brush ones, there's a playlist on there. So today is just demos, and last week we launched our brand new luminosity embossing powders and inks and all the accessories that go with it. So I've had loads of lovely feedback and loads of comments and people sharing their makes with me. So I wanted to try a few more different techniques with these embossing powders so you can see all the different ways. Obviously we can't fit everything in one show. So we're going to do a bit of stamping with them today, and we're going to create some backgrounds with the Reinker. So let's carry on with the stamping, which is going to be with these two stamp and die sets here, which is the Believe, and this is kind of going to be my last live Christmas demo for you. So if you are still a little bit behind on your Christmas crafting, don't worry. Hopefully this will give you a quick insight of something that you can do very, very easily with your embossing powders and works perfectly for guys and girls. So I'm just going to get my Eureka and, excuse me a second, and my stamp set. So I'm making a black, quite a small card, so again they're great for doing lots and lots of cards. So this is an A6 card and this piece is slightly smaller than an A6. And in this Believe set you've got all these lovely little elements, ferns, fir trees, mistletoe, holly, branches and snow and things like that on there. So I'm just going to make a background of all these different ones with the embossing powder. So before I start, we've got embossing anti-static bag. So if you haven't seen this before, this just is a loose powder in this little cloth bag that just stops the embossing powder from sticking where you don't want it when you're stamping. And if I take off, let's take off all these little elements. There's berries, look, and holly leaves. And the great thing about using a stamping tool for this is that we can put on all these at the same time. In fact, I'll probably stamp every one twice looking at the space we've got. So spend a couple of seconds just kind of laying them out. The sentiment we've got is quite big and it's going to go in the middle, so I'm just kind of bearing that in mind. We don't need too much in the middle really, because it's just going to get lost anyway. Let's do some snow up there and some berries, and I'll come back round and do these. Don't worry about the residue, the white powder that anti-static bag has left. That will brush off after. So then next I'm using the Luminosity embossing ink pad that we launched last week. So it's a really nice juicy pad, and hopefully, because this is on black card, you'll see a little bit easier even before we put a powder on. You can just about see where we've stamped it there, but obviously once we put the embossing powder it will become much clearer. When I emboss with stamping, I do go over it again, just in case, because it is clear, in case I've missed any bits, and it makes your embossing powder really, really smooth. In fact, let's just because we can, do one more time. And then if we take the stamps off that side and rearrange them then again for the second stamp. Trying to be quite random and have them overlapping off the page a little bit as well. Probably don't need all of these now for this second one. Might get a bit too full. That'll probably do it. So because we're using these dark tones and these metallics, like I say, this is great for a card for guys as well as girls and couples and things like that. It's quite quick to do. Second stamp. In fact, I better do this 3 times as well, hadn't I? Being as I did the other one. Don't want it coming out one half better than the other. And if I gently take off that magnet. And now we'll get the powders. So if you've got your powders, the ones I'm going to use for this demonstration are Gold Digger and Silver Lining, which are in the Gold Trio Extreme set. Or you can find them on the website if you want to have a look at those. It comes with like a nice rosy gold as well, that I've used in some other demonstrations. So I'm actually going to use both of these, the gold and the silver, on the same background. So to do that, it's important that we use one colour at a time. So let's do the gold near the bottom, and I'm just going to tip it over the bottom half. Okay, pop the excess straight back in. Don't need to heat set to change colours necessarily, because otherwise you've got that all that ink there that you haven't put any powder on. I always do all the stamping and all the powders and then just heat set once. And silver for the top half, and I'm just going to slightly overlap, so hopefully you'll get a tiny bit of a kind of ombre bleed, or little bits bleeding into each other. So the great thing about these powders is that look quite dull when they're when you first tip them on, you think, oh, that's not very silvery or goldy, but then they come to life when you heat them up. So grab a heat tool. I'm going to zoom in on this bit for you. Sorry, I just spotted a bit of, just before we start, just a bit of loose powder there. If you get just a dry brush, if you have, I think it just caught where the magnet was and I couldn't use the anti-static, but not a problem. Let the heat gun heat up for a couple of seconds. And then you can start to see that changing, all that lovely gold and silver changing together. Okay, see the shine on that? So that's our background done. Again, you can just use, if you've got a bit of that anti-static, just dulling your card a little bit. If you use a dry brush, that'll bring it back to black for you. And get rid of any of that white residue. Lovely. So let's do the sentiment to go with this. I'm going to stamp this lovely big Believe from the set just on some white card. I'm just using some black ink for this one, and then we'll die cut it out, but again you could use one of your metallics or white or whatever you fancy for the wording. I'm just using a VersaFine this time, just for a kind of bold monochrome black and white look. And this is a really lovely big sentiment. So kind of here the Christmassy elements make the background, and it's the sentiment that's the real kind of star of the show, if you like. I'm sure most of you have probably made all of your Christmas cards already. I'm sure you've been making them for months, like lots of crafters, but don't worry if you haven't. I'm sure you can knock up a few in the next week or two. Lovely. It's a really nice kind of Christmassy script as well for the Believe. Whoops. Dropping everything everywhere. So in the die set, you get two elements for the Believe. You get this kind of inner one that cuts it out and leaves just a tiny border. So I'm going to cut that out the white. Just line it up nicely. And then I need some scrap black. Let's just use this piece I've got lying around here. To do, this is kind of like the matte layer that will sit behind, so I don't need all that. And these die cuts look great on tags and things like that too. So let's run both of those through the die cut at the same time, the die machine. And bring in a card blank. I've got some fun foam that I use to bring the background, to give it a little bit of dimension. And I've just cut that background very, very slightly smaller, look, than the card. So there's our Believe tape's a little bit too tacky, I think, for that, but never mind. And our matte layer for it. Just before I pop it together, I've got one of Tony's Gossip glitter pens in silver, and I just want to add an extra bit of kind of sparkle. Didn't want to do any colouring in as such because this is a really dark background, but just to give it an extra bit of Christmassy sparkle, just a couple of the leaves maybe. Maybe those berries down there. This will dry back and just leave the glitter. Put in as much or as little detail as you like, and maybe the branches as well. That's pretty much dry straight away though, so put the foam on with some double-sided tape. I never use wet glue for attaching the foam because it buckles. Send your card all wavy. I really like doing smaller cards at Christmas because when you have so many, it helps with the cost of them because you can get more cards, card blanks say out of an A4 sheet if you're making your own. If you're cutting them down to A6, but as well it just makes them that little bit quicker. Less glue, less tape, less everything. So if you have to get yourself a factory line and do 20 at once, 50 at once, however many you're doing. Want the gold at the top or the bottom? Let's have the gold at the bottom. And then for the believe, I'm just going to wet glue, stick that together. The fine tip on my wet glue so I can get in all that lovely detail with that scripty, Christmassy font. I think that's one that you'd get out year after year as well, goes with any kind of style of card, this lovely believe die, and stamp it, and then you get all your, in the set there's loads of other sentiments as well for the stamp set, and you get a couple more dies with it. Okay, so I'm going to make that in the middle and then just add maybe a little bit more in terms of gems or something like that, but I want to raise that up with some foam pads first. So tell me, has everybody finished their Christmas shopping as well as their Christmas crafting? I think I'm pretty much done. Although I start in September, I'm one of those people. And then ends up buying more in December anyway. But I must stop now. I am really, really done. My husband's more of a Christmas Eve job. Just get that nice and straight. And let's see if we can find some little gems to add an extra bit of sparkle. In fact, I'm going to pop them in those berries. So if you're not the best colourist in the world, or you just want to try something quick and simple with your embossing powders that's still really effective and really shows off those metallic colours on the dark, There we go. So we can get loads of nice shine on there. And that's the first one. Just getting a little bit closer for you as it's a smaller card, just so you can see the detail a bit more. There we go. Great. So we'll move on to the next one. Next one is, so Christmas, we're kind of done with the live ones. And we'll make a nice background with the embossing powders. So for this, I've die cut just a plain simple circle with just a die I had in my stash, and I'm going to use the Reinker to create a kind of metallic circle on here within a circle. And to do that, I'm going to use a flat brush or whatever watercolour or even acrylic blush you've got lying around the house, and the Reinker that you can buy for your luminosity pad. So obviously when this does start to dry out over time, you can top it up with this. I'm actually going to use it on its own because it's like a lovely clear glue that you can create backgrounds with. So I'm going to use the Eureka, just the corner of it, to act as like a little work surface for me, and I'm going to squeeze a little bit on. Little goes a long way. And it feels quite sticky, like a glue, as you would expect on your brush. And then I'm going to just inside, I'm not going to completely cover, very loosely. Do a very rough circular shape, fill it in. You can always, if you feel like you haven't got enough on there, you can always add a bit more, but it's kind of impossible to get it back in once you've done it, so I always say use a bit less, and you can always add a bit more on there. Whereas if you use too much, I'd say just get out a load of card and make a load of them while you've got it there, because you will not be able to get that back in that tiny little tip once you've squeezed it out. So that's got the clear embossing ink on now. Grab our trusty bit of copy paper to catch the powder, and I'm going to use the lovely gold digger, which is that really bright, shiny, luminous gold. Oh, I must have cut 2 circles there, look, got a spare. And it's going to stick to where. This is where, personally, I don't mind not using the anti-static bag. You could use, like I say, the dry brush to get any other bits if it's not quite as perfect as you want, but to be honest, I quite like it a little bit perfectly imperfect, as we always say, don't we? There we go. So yeah, it's slightly off centre, but I quite like that. Get rid of the excess. And let's heat set that. Again, this is a really, really nice quick card. Oh, just put my thumb in that. It's a bit silly. Let's see if we can get that. That was supposed to be there, that thumbprint. So this will come out really nice and shiny gold now. And the rougher you are with your brush and the more stiff the brush, the more textured your effect is going to be. So therefore, the smoother the brush for using watercolour ones, it'll go really smooth. But it almost kind of gives like a foiled look, and you've got like brush marks in, look at the edges. Really, really pretty. So don't feel like you have to stick to circle shapes. You could do a whole card background, like an oblong, an oval, a heart, anything you like, but I cut this out to kind of give me a bit of a guide because I'm not very good at cutting circles. So that gives us something to put our sentiment on. So like I say, this is a really, really simple card. I dropped my paper. Oh, there we go. Almost like quite a modern card that would be great for a teenager or something. and I've cut out from the magnolia papers that we've done. This is kind of like a watercolour-y background that almost looks like it's got a bit of gold flecked in it anyway, so I thought it's perfect with that gold digger. So on our top folding black note card, just a white matten layer. I feel like I'm doing more matten layers lately, but sometimes when I'm not doing as much colouring, I feel like it gives it something else. A bit more frame and a bit more depth. And for the paper, I'm going to use some more funky foam just to lift it up a little bit. My favourite funky foam, or fun foam, or whatever it's called. Doesn't need to be a mega expensive one, or unless you want more height. The less expensive ones you just tend to get 1.5 mil maybe. If you want a 3 mil height on your foam, then just buy a more expensive one. They tend to be bigger. That needs to be trimmed down a tiny bit more. I'm being very picky here, I think. That would have been absolutely fine, but I just wanted it to have the border all the way around. Oh, I've used up Tony's tape pen. So that nice background, and then to add on the circle. Now you could even distress a little bit at the edge here with some distress inks, but I think I might leave it just nice and clean and simple. Just where do I want that kind of offset edge, make a feature of it, maybe to the side there. And some foam pads just to stick that down. So you notice there, you can almost see that ink soaking through from where we painted it on with the brush from the Reinker. So I would say if you're doing this technique, I mean it doesn't matter, it's not wet, but because it's quite thick, it's going to soak into your card a bit. So don't use that technique on anything that's too thin paper wise or a light cardstock. I'd use something maybe 250 up so it can handle not just the wetness of the Reinker but also the heat embossing that you're going to do on it. And then just a tiny little sentiment that's been stamped in the luminosity ink, use the pure white and then just trimmed on this little black piece there. So very, very clean and simple card, but modern looking, like I say, would be perfect for teenagers or a friends or congratulations. My daughter's doing her mocks at the moment, so maybe I'll send her one of these if she gets good grades on them. She said to me the other week, do I get money if I do well in my mocks? And I'm like, well, they're not the real exams, so no. Come back to me when you've actually passed them. But she's doing great. And then just to finish, some pinky kind of sequins that are just going to tie all that gold and pink together. And I tend to put my glue down first. I'm doing 5. Decide where I want them. A little bit random. I always do odd numbers, as most people do with embellishments, because it's more pleasing to the eye apparently. And I try to avoid straight lines, even if they've got to move just a millimetre or so. So wet glue is great for this because it gives you a bit of room to wiggle around if you need to change. I need some kind of pick-up tool or something. And there we go. So really, really cool background. As I say, you could do a whole card with that. But I've just done it on a circle with an embossed sentiment and backed with one of the papers. And then just to bring in our little Christmas card as well. So a really cute little one with the silver and the gold and the belief set. So two completely different techniques there for you, some just stamping and something to create something completely different. So have a go with the backgrounds on there. Show me what you do. I'd love to see what you think. And don't go anywhere though, there's one more little video for you to watch.